December of 44. She had been born that March, and this was Christmas of 44, that same year. We were stationed in Lawrenceville, Illinois. John was in the Army. It was war. He was in the Air Corps. That's what they called it then. And he was a pilot in this nice little house that we were renting. We were very fortunate to have a nice home with central heating, and he even had a little fireplace. My grandson, Gordon, who was then 4, and he wasn't a grandson, he was a nephew, my sister's child, and Toledo were over in the little playroom off of the living room playing. And Toledo, of course, being our only child, her little wish was our command. Well, Gordy entered the picture at 4, and he decided that some of the toys might be his. So they had an argument over a toy. And being 4 and she being 9 months, he got the better of the deal. Well, of course, she squalled her head off and started going towards the bedroom, which was right off of the little playroom, thinking that's where I was. She was going for help. And my mother and I were across the room in the little dining areas, and Mother said, Toledo, we're in here, come in here. She was named for my mother. My mother's name is Toledo. And Toledo just went squalling into the bedroom. And Mother wasn't used to being told no, so she stomped her foot and said, I said, come here. And when she stomped her foot, those vibrations went right through, and Toledo stopped on a dime and looked around and saw us, and then came, of course, squalling to us, and of course got all kind of love and affection, and poor little Gordy. But anyway, after we got it all settled, and they went back to the playroom and began to play as good friends again, my mother turned to me and in no uncertain terms, in a very kind voice, said, Dela, the child doesn't hear. And I said, what did you say? She said, she doesn't hear. But I began to watch her. And when I would put her down for her little afternoon nap, she was all snuggled warm in her bed and sound asleep. I was sure of that. I went over to the bed and I clapped my hands to see if I could awaken her, and nothing happened. And I thought, well, leave her alone. So then I just kind of nudged the bed and she wiggled. So I thought, well, okay. So I walked then from the bed over to the door to go out. And I slammed the door and watched the crib, and she wiggled. So the vibrations went through and she wiggled. Well, after that, then I became very conscious of it. And when we'd be in the kitchen, I'd take a aluminum pan with a spoon and beat it and see if she would have any reaction. None. But she still smiled and laughed and giggled, and at 9 months she didn't say anything, just funny little children noises. But anyway, I wanted her to hear, of course, number one. But if she wasn't going to hear, I still wanted her to live in a hearing world where she would communicate and be active with her brothers, her sisters, all her family, her friends, and to live in a hearing world. Now that was my dream. I called Miss Tracy and badgered her, and finally I said, what's the matter with your telephone wires? You all don't answer the phone anymore. She said, no, we don't, because we know it's you, and we don't have anything to offer you. So I said, Miss Tracy, listen, let's make a deal. I'll ask for nothing. I will hold you to nothing. Just let me come. Let's just see what a 13-month-old can do versus a 3-year-old. So she said, all right, you're on your own, and we owe you nothing, and blah, blah, blah. And I said, that's right. So I went, and I took her. Well, when she had been there for 6 weeks, they lowered their entrance to 13 months. And of course, like us, now they take them when they're wet, fresh out. But anyway, that was the beginning of it. And anyway, I called John in Miss Tracy's office. We became very nice friends. And I said, John, I'm not coming home, so you bring Mifey. We had another little girl at that point, and come to California. I have no idea what kind of a living we're going to have, and Miss Tracy said, give me the phone. And she said, John, this is Louise Tracy. Dela is coming home, so come get her. And she's going to start a school for young deaf children. That's the first I'd heard of it. I was 24. I had 3 years of college. I did not know tooly bug about starting a school, much less for deaf children. She said, I'm going to tell you how. Well, she did. Right across the street, a little down to the west, was the Hannah Lander Memorial Library. And Mr. and Mrs. Lander, God bless them, had lived there forever and had given their home to the San Antonio Library. But on their property was a little cottage. Children had a wonderful time playing in and out of this vacant little house. So I called Ms. Grothouse, who was head of the San Antonio Library. And I said, Miss Julia, would you consider letting me borrow that little cottage for a school for young deaf children? She said, what? So we went all through that rigmarole, and she said, yeah. She said, but Dela, it needs help. And I said, yeah, I'm fully conscious of that. But may I rent it from you? She said, I can't sell it to you, but I can rent it for $1 a year. I said, we can afford that. So then, but it still looked pretty shabby. So I went out on San Pedro to this nice little man. He was closing out his store. And I told him we were starting a school for young deaf children, and we were dead broke, but did he have anything he wanted to get rid of? And he said, oh, I overbought in yellow. You can have all the yellow you want, and I'll throw in some sandpaper and whatever and whatever. And he did. I came back with a nice big box of paint, everything yellow. So we got the brushes out, and we painted everything yellow. Well, there was the little cottage, and it was yellow, so we called it Sunshine Cottage, and that's how it got its name. Because what it costs to educate a child that has a hearing loss is college money. It's astronomical. So, and the expense is all this equipment. Plus, of course, I think teachers are horribly underpaid. I'll probably get shot for saying that, but I do mean, when you see basketball, football, baseball, those players, millions. And then you take a woman or a gentleman who's got your child from 7 in the morning to 5 in the evening. They can mold that child one way or the other. And that teacher molds them in the right direction 9 times out of 10. We got some bummers, you know how that goes. We don't, but public schools do. But whoever does, I'm not picking on that. But anyway, they should be paid that kind of money, or certainly more than they are paid, in my opinion. Well, anyway, how'd I get up on that? We have the John White Scholarship that I kind of look after, because monies came in memory of John or in honor of John when he died. And like I say, they wanted to do some statue or something, and I said, never. And Dr. Bruce said, no, he'd be interested in the education. So now that money goes towards educating teachers at UTSA Health Science Center. And we take people to become teachers of deaf education through that training. And they've been wonderful to us. So we've been blessed on that side of the coin. The whole situation, it was just kind of like it was meant to be. And upstairs made it all come true with all the wonderful people that came on the board, and they came from all walks of life. And you know, I get a lot of credit. I'm sitting here telling you all this, and I get a lot of this credit. And that's okay. I do mind it. I don't like it. But I had the idea, because John and I had the child. You would have done the same thing, whoever's listening to this tape, you'd have done the same thing for your child. But if it hadn't have been for the community, the doctors, the faculty at Sunshine Cottage, you don't know what they do. They're there at 7 o'clock in the morning waiting for these children now to come, because mothers and daddies are both working and they have to be at work early.
We got it. We got plenty. Did a great job.
I hope so, because we ain't going to do it again.
No, we don't.